right, so we are going to be focusing on a different type of transformation today. Up until this point, we've been using Control T, and we've done really simple, somewhat proportional transformations where we've made things smaller or bigger, but today we're going to look at skewing them, maybe even like the perspective, so things that aren't necessarily to scale. Now, to start off, I have this little transformation exercise that we're going to do together, and yes, it will be epically fun, as I promise. I was really perky when I made this last year, when I was young and full of hope. And now what we're going to do... What was that? It will still be epically fun. I'm glad I had that reminder. And the reason why I set it up this way is I wanted to do kind of some layer organization with you guys. I'm kind of up here in my own little bubble all the time, so I can't necessarily see exactly what you're doing until after you turn it in. But while you're working, you know, I think it's always just a good reminder. If you open up a file and you can't find something, just make sure the eyeballs are on where you need to be. And if you want to see more of the contents in a folder, you can click on the expand or collapse and hopefully see that there's a lot more to this than just the epically fun part, right? Okay, so if you start expanding the transformation exercise, you will see different shape sets in here. Okay, and what we're trying to do with these, let me make sure I'm not leading you astray. Okay, what I'd like to do with these is for you to take the shapes that are in green and line it up with the shapes that are black. Does that make sense? So the green should copy the black. The black shouldn't move. So let's start with shape set number 1. So again, we're going to move the green to match the black. And in order to get to transformation, go ahead and hit V so that you're in the move command. And then once you're in move, you can see that I can actually start even just like putting this on top of it. Now, if I really wanted to see the green right on top of the black, how could I do that? Yeah, I just drag and drop my layers, so I switch them so that the green is on top now. Can you guys tell me the shortcut so I can start rotating this one? What's our shortcut? Yep, Control T to transform. And then from there, you should just be able to kind of roll it and move it. And it looks like the black square is a little bit bigger, right?
How did you do that?
Control T.
I got that part, but
Oh, to actually roll it?
Yeah.
You got it?
Never mind, I got it.
Okay, cool. We know, it happens. Not saying that we know yours froze, but somebody's is gonna freeze, right? Like it's just how it goes this semester. And I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna cheat a little bit. Lorena, I'm gonna start projecting in just 1 sec so I can get you back on. I'm gonna hit enter. What, did it let you reopen it? Good. And I'll try that one more time. And see how I'm getting close, but I'm not quite exactly there? You see that? What we'll really be focusing on today is how to do it so that it's not necessarily symmetrical, but we can start skewing it and skewing the perspective. So this is really just going over technique. Right now, there's no words or images of people. It's just a shape that we're trying to move, so it is a little bit easier. But once we start getting people and words and shapes, you can kind of see it start to skew. So you can see here that my corners aren't quite lining up. Do you guys see that? So I want more than just a Control T. And to help me out, I'm going to go a little bit closer. And let's do one other thing. So some of you guys have done this kind of by accident, but now you get to do it on purpose. What I'd like to do is right now the two layers are on top of each other in what's called normal. We're going to be talking about these effects a lot more later in the semester, but just for today, if you do something called multiply, it might be too dark. I want to go to a different one so I can really see them on top of each other. Overlay. Let me do soft light, nope, I'll do hard light. And see how it still lets me see kind of what's behind it. So again, I clicked on my green layer, and then up here where it used to say normal, I changed it to hard light. And over here you can kind of see what it does. It lets me know where it kind of hangs over. Everybody with me so far? Okay. No.
My bar only has hard mix.
It only has hard mix.
Yeah.
Is everything else grayed out?
No.
Go up a little bit. Hard light. Yep, I see it right under soft light. So it goes overlay, soft light, hard light. Keep coming down. Cool. All right. Now for this next step, everybody's going to be a little bit different just because we've all skewed it and rotated it a little bit differently. So I want you guys to look at my screen first just to kind of see the technique. I'm going to turn it around for you guys to try your best. Let me zoom out just a little bit more. I'm going to call that good. I don't think I can get any closer without losing it. So I'm going to go to Control T again. And remember, for this part, you're just watching, okay? Control T. And what I want to do is right click, and you see that there's all these different kinds of transforming that we haven't done. There's scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective, all these different ones. I want you guys to play with each one of them as the day goes on, but I want to start with skew. Because we've already, scale just means you're making it bigger. We've done that, and we've also rotated it, right? But I'm going to start with skew. And what skew does is if I grab a corner and pull, what's happening to the other corners? Anything?
No.
No. Yep, they stay. So I'm going to use skew to try and get this corner to line up. And then I grab this other corner and I try to get that to line up. Now when I'm skewing it, are any of the other corners moving? Let me right click and do that another way. If I go to distort, if I pull a corner, are other corners moving? Yeah. So this one's really distorting it. So I don't love distort, right? And then check out perspective. If I pull on perspective, are other corners moving? Absolutely, right? So I think that you get the most control out of skew. So that's the one that I kind of default to quite a bit. Now you guys can go ahead and do a Control T and try any one of those to get these lined up. How's that working for you guys? Better than what it was? Yeah? Good. So once you get this first shape done, I hope I'm not moving too fast. If I am, throw up a hand or give me a bad look. Go ahead and collapse shape set 1 and turn it off. And then
Turn it back to normal instead of hard light.
you can keep it hard light for this one. Yeah, good question. And then for shape set 2, I want you to go ahead and do that same thing. So again, green matches to black. So with this one, go ahead and reorder them how you need to. You can change the layer, whether it's normal or not, however you can see it better. And then again, use Control T. And because it's the first time we've worked on these, maybe try a little bit of each one, just so you get an idea of how each one works. And maybe you'll find your own favorite.
So you want the green to be the black.
Yes. Okay, so on shape set 3, we're having a little bit of trickiness. And part of it too, I would guess that we have two really unique shapes. We're not going from a rectangle, something simple, to something that's complex. We're going from something that's already complex to something that's complex as well. So I'm going to start from the very beginning. First, I'm going to move my green shape on top so that I can easily see it. I will also make it a hard light so I can see how they overlap. And now that I've got those two things set up, I'm going to go to Control T. And I'm just actually going to rotate it first to kind of get it lined up. If I didn't rotate it first, I can just go straight to the skew. Did anybody rotate it before you started?
I did.
Okay, cool. Well, just in case. So with the skew, I'm going to grab this part. And I can see, like I can feel that it's kind of like fighting against me. Like it almost feels like it's snapping on something a little bit. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. And what I'm doing is I'm just kind of grabbing and letting go and grabbing and letting go. But it's definitely not moving as easy as it did the first time. Because do you guys see that my grip point is completely different from where the shape is? So it just kind of takes a little bit of finessing. And then if I come off of the grip point, see how I'm accidentally moving it?
So you have to grab it by the grip.
Yes, you have to grab it by the grip point, unfortunately. And sometimes what you can do, see how I have this corner pretty much placed? I'm going to hit Enter, so at least that corner is placed. And I'm going to try Control T again and see if I can do this corner a little bit easier once that one is moved. That was really weird. I don't know what I did there.
Yeah, I get that.
2020, we've got some new stuff. Am I in skew? Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure. There are new features that pop up that I will have not seen before, like this one here. I'm going to see what that does. So when the double-headed arrows come up, it moves the whole thing. Okay, interesting. So it almost makes it a distort. Bless you. I think my best advice for you guys, for this one in particular, I hope this helps kind of answer or solve some of the troubles you were having, is just make sure that when you're doing your skew, do it from the grip points. Because if I come to the middle of the line, see how you can't see it on my machine, on my projection, you just see the red one. But if you come to the middle, you get a double-headed line, and that will move the whole thing. So again, just to preserve where I am, I'm going to hit Enter, and then I'm going to start the whole thing again. Skew or just the shape?
I don't know, just not how the shape is funky and then.
Yeah, it definitely takes some, finessing, but we'll get there. I'm even going to go to Distort and see if I can get that one to move.
Really hard.
So for the second one, I know it's messing up one of the corners, but Distort kind of helps move it too. So just work through them to see which one might work best for you. Okay, and again, I like to hit Enter every once in a while just so I don't lose maybe some of the work that I've done. wish I could skew and rotate at the same time, but it's not going to let me. So I just have to really stretch this shape out.
The one thing I understand.
What was that?
They asked me if I was done, and I said yes. And I said the one thing that I understand.
Me too. It's like little nudge here, little nudge there. Go fix that side. Little nudge here, little nudge there.
It helps to like go out of it too for a minute.
Uh-huh.
To like reset the boundaries. So
It
it's not,
does.
like, all the way out there.
Yes, I keep hitting enter and then coming back in.
I didn't realize that at first because I was getting really frustrated. But now I get it.
And then it tries to help you and you're like, no, really, please don't. I don't want it to line up with that. Oops.
Dang it, it's like barely.
I'm super close too.
No, look at mine.
Oh, that one's perfect. I'll call that one good.
Even though there's like a tiny black.
Oh yeah, that's totally fine. I think it looks
okay,
great.
Then I could have been done like 5 minutes ago.
No, it looks cool. Yeah. So really, this is, I know it's so tedious, but it's a really good exercise. So you guys can figure out how each one of the different transformations work, and similar to how we were selecting stuff at the beginning of the semester, which feels like last week, I've been combining them. So I've been doing skewing and distorting and then hopping back into, I didn't use warp because it curved it, but I think it helps to combine them.
You're almost there. You can do it.
You're a good cheerleader. I think you should let her do it on her own now. Similar to what I do, you just gotta let her do it on her own and learn from it. I think she's got it.
On my shape too,
Yeah.
I don't know what I did, I don't have my
Oh, weird.
shape anymore.
Shoot. So
I'm trying to figure it out.
with that one, you might have to go back through your history and get that other, what are those called? Oh, I just totally forgot what they're called. It's not an endpoint. It's, I mean, the word is corner, but it's something else.
Right.
Corner, I can't know. We have them in CAD, I just can't think of what they're called. Node, there you go, node. You lost your node. Without the node, you can't necessarily make the shape.
Is there a way I can add it back on?
No, not without going through your history and then just kind of running through it again. All right, I'm going to introduce the next part so that you guys can hop on it whenever you're ready. I'm going to go into transformations and let me pull up a couple examples of this too from last semester. I think it'll help to see. Well, the reason why we're working on skewing some of the transformations is that today I'm going to have you guys work on 3 different billboards. And so the billboards that I have are examples of billboards that already exist. So let me just pull this one up today. So it's a pretty good example. And what I want you guys to do is to replace this content with something else, essentially designing your own billboard. So it could just be like a positive message like this. It could be a fake ad. But I think the thing that everybody really needs to focus on is that, not that weed is legal. I think what we need to focus on is that all 3 of these look like one cohesive billboard. I think the mistake that a lot of students make when we first start working in these is you'll do like a text box and then an image somewhere else and then like a separate background. But do you see how all of this looks like one whole image? Like we have one image that's the entire background. They added the signature, the logo, and then some other. But it really does look like one whole thing that came together. You guys with me on that one? Let me go back and show you the others. So even this one, we've got two separate kind of images and backgrounds, but they're separated nicely with this other design feature. And then like a logo right here. So even though they're separate, do you see how they're kind of tied in together? And then again, the font is really easy to read. It's really big and bold. This one is pretty small. You can't read that. There's a Lagoon ad out right now. There's a billboard, and I feel so bad because it is just so small. I'm like, Lagoon paid so much money and nobody will know it's a Lagoon ad. It's over by the Whole Foods in Conwood Heights, in case you're ever in that area. Just take a look. It's really hard to see what it is. So legibility is important. And then also make it something aesthetically pleasing to look at. Don't get like a really pixelated picture that's kind of hard to understand, right? Make it a really nice, clean, bold image. And really, there's a lot of concepts here at play. So we've got legibility. We want to make sure, and legibility includes, the legibility of the font, as well as the images that we're looking at. And I also, again, just want to make sure that it looks professional. And you guys aren't graphic designers, right? We're learning Photoshop as interior designers. But part of how this plays into everything is that once you start using Photoshop to maybe render rooms and things like that, there could be a piece of art that your client absolutely wants to see on a wall. Or there might be like vinyl lettering that they absolutely want to put in, or signage, anything like that. You can use Photoshop to quickly render something like that up. So we're going to be spending the majority of our class time today working on one of them and kind of critiquing each other, and I will critique you. So this assignment will actually be like a 2-week process. So you're going to do all 3 of them over the next week, and you're going to put them online in a discussion, JPEGs, and we're all going to comment on them because the unfortunate thing is sometimes something looks perfect to us, but it's not until we post it for everybody else to see that we're like, oh, that word is spelled wrong, or everything's like really skewed. And depending on whether or not you have taken like a perspective drawing class, this could be totally new to you. Like you might not have any idea of what you're doing. So that's why I think that 2 classes with this are really helpful. One to kind of be a rough draft to get you started, and then a second one with kind of our opinion. Now before we jump into this, there's a couple things we have to go over. One of them will be how to include text. And then once you get text in there, it kind of transforms just like anything else. But let me also go through a quick lecture, I guess, on perspective really quick. And I'm going to use this wall right here as an example. And I think it's a good example because I've got all of these lines like running along that wall right there. So if we were doing a front-on billboard, it would be really simple because I would essentially just have a long rectangle, right? And then 2 lines coming across, something like that, right? Everybody's with me? Mm-hmm. Now, with all of these billboards, they are somewhat at an angle. They aren't straight. So with this one right here, if you guys can take a look, we have what's called essentially our vanishing lines or our vanishing point. Do you guys see that there's one line that comes down this way? And then at the bottom, we've got this other line right here. So these are the lines that we need to focus on. And the quick rule of thumb about those is that everything vanishes to one point. That's the way that perspective works. So if I were to take this wall and I was going to sketch it, if the actual wall looks something like this, and that could be totally incorrect, but remember, we've got these vanishing points that go off somewhere. So I've got these 2 lines here that everything's coming into, right? So on our billboard, we at least have these 2 lines, which means that anything that we put in here should also follow those lines. So if I wanted to put text on here, like that says sale or something like that, if I knew the top of my text is here, I hope I can get to that line. Okay, so there's the top. Let's say I wanted the bottom of it to be here. That might not, you know what I'm trying to do. Pretend it's straight. I could grab one of those boards and make it straight. But at the end of the day, if I were to like block letter sale, to get this right perspective, do you see how my letters have to kind of shrink down to fit it? That's kind of what you're doing. But then here, if I were to do that same sale, it's totally off the perspective, but it would just come in straight up and down because I don't have the perspective anymore. Got it? So I think the biggest advice I could give you, just remember there's 2 vanishing points that everybody has, and then just look to see if your lines on the top are parallel to that top line, and then the lines on the bottom, if it's not quite as skewed like that one, that those are parallel to the bottom. I think that's the biggest advice I could give you. If your top line is angled like this, and then you have something that's angled like that, it's gonna look really funny. Or if you go like at a crazy angle too, you want to just make it look like everything's front on and flat. So that's where we're going with this, but the content, again, totally up to you. Yeah.
So are we putting something like over these ones, or are we finding our own billboards and then?
No, these are the billboards that you're using, but you will be covering them. So you're gonna put something completely new on there. And the reason why I left the content on there is if I just gave you something totally white, I think it's even hard, even though like the billboard has an edge, I think it helps seeing the size of like the text and the perspective that's already in there. So for today's class, you will probably be spending just as much time online looking for content and fonts as you will working in the billboard. Again, let me grab an example from our other classes. So for this one, this is the first billboard. This one, can you see that the text is slightly kind of skewed up top, but then the one on the bottom almost doesn't line up. This one's pretty close, but it might need a little bit more finessing. Let's go here. Okay. So with this Be Bold, this one's really close too. I'm going to have you guys look at it for just a minute. What do you guys think? Does this one look right to you, or does something look off? It looks a little bit off, right? So if we're taking a look at those perspective lines again, so our biggest part is up here, and this B looks smaller than that B to me. So essentially, it almost looks like the billboard to me is kinked a little bit. So it almost starts going out the other direction. So if I can draw lines on this. So if we were to kind of fix this, if we kept this bold, we'd probably want this to get a little bit bigger. And then same here. I know those aren't straight, but I think by making that B bigger would help the perspective on it. Okay. So here's the last one. I think the Happy Halloween reads well. And the Don't Forget to Smile is also really close. The only thing to watch out for, I'm going to try to draw this line again. See how this T starts to kind of drop down a little bit more than it should? I think that just needs to be bumped up a little bit more. Let's go to a couple others. Just JPEGs. Okay, this one's got a couple, I mean the image, do you guys see that it's pixelated? It almost looks like the text is pixelated. And really for this assignment, what I want you guys to focus on is just having text that should look like it's front on. But by trying to kind of angle it, the whole thing just ends up looking crazy. Okay. This one, it almost looks cohesive, not quite. I think the font just looks like It should be on an elementary school worksheet maybe. So I might change that a little bit. Is that all of them? Okay. What about this one? Do you guys see anything, or does it pass? Oranges is a little bit off. Florida's perfect, but do you see how this S gets bigger than the O? It should be the opposite. The O should be bigger, and then the S gets smaller. Really close though.
Look great.
Yeah, the orange is really nice. Nice and bright, good background. I agree. Okay, I'm gonna do one more. I'm just shaking my head on this one. Do you guys agree? It's super pixelated, right? So I like where they're going, but it just was executed poorly. It doesn't look professional. And then this one too, it's just kind of awkward to have a bump. Put the burger there. It really looks like it was just kind of, well, it was cropped out. And then Are You Hungry looks like it's falling off of the billboard. I don't know if you guys can see that, but the perspective looks like it's falling off or being blown away to the other side. And let's see. And these are PSDs, so let's see. Okay, so again, the image, kind of hard to read. It's already pretty abstract. You can see it's a collage, but then to just throw text over it, it just looks kind of weird. So remember, straight fonts.
No, remember to look up big picture.
There you go. What was that?
It looks like it was supposed to be like graffiti or something.
The background? Oh, this, yeah?
Like the text.
A little crazy, yeah. And then this one, it just looks so squatty. So don't distort your images to get them to fit. Do you see how this was distorted to get them to fit in there? So make sure it's not distorted. Try to find an image that's big enough that'll fit that background or find a new concept. It would. By the time you're trying to read that, just, yep, it would be short and sweet. And I think this one works well. I would say that this corner could come up like a tiny, tiny hair, right? But the bottom part looks okay. Does that help now that you've seen some examples? Mm-hmm. Good. So that's what I'll be looking for. And I am going to hop into the text. Some of you guys might need to see the text. Some of you guys might not need to see how text works. But either way, I'm going to go over it and how you can also distort your text. And I'm just going to do it right here in the transformation file, and then you guys can do whatever you'd like in your Photoshop files. So I'm switching gears. But text is down here at the bottom. And for now, I really do just want to stick to the horizontal type tool. If you right click, there are other type tools, but we're just going to do the horizontal type tool. And up until this point of the semester, we've always done black or white, like we've kind of toggled back and forth. But if you want to change the color of your background shape or your text, you can click into here, and then this is your color picker. And the way that I think the way that it works the best is just to take this middle portion and kind of get it into the family of colors you want, and then click on it, and that's the one it selects. Okay, so if I wanted to do like a bluish text, I'd come down to the blues. It gives me a preview of it here. And then as soon as I find the one that I want, I can click on OK. Got it? Any questions about that? So you can see this is changed. And then with text, the way that you start it is you can just click and start typing. It's really small. But what I like to do instead of just clicking and starting typing is when you click and drag, do you see how it's drawing a text frame for you? I think this makes it a lot easier to move your text around by doing it in a text frame. So let me show you that one more time. I'm going to undo that. So T for text, and you can't see it, but my cursor is like a text cursor. If I just click, it's basically one really, really long sentence that goes on forever. So I'm going to undo that. But if you do a click and drag, can you see on my screen that I'm actually drawing a text box? That makes it a lot easier. So from here, let's say, I'm just going to write Sunny Road. It makes no sense, but that's what I'm going to go for. And then after this point, it's going to be really similar to how you would work in like Microsoft Word. So you can come up here and find a font that you like. If you can't find a font that you like, I can show you places where you can go online and find other fonts. Let me try to find something. There's not a lot here. Okay, so I'm going to keep going with this, but in a minute I will show you guys how to get more fonts. So let's say that this is the one I want. Even on here, if I go back into editing it, I can still center it. So I'm really skipping over this stuff because it should be really similar to how you work in like Microsoft Word or even like writing an email. It should all be pretty familiar stuff to you. But now we want to get into the transformation part of it. So if I hit Control T right now, you can see that with some of these, do you see how it's not available for text? So if I go to skew, I can skew it a little bit here and there, but I still can't distort or go to perspective, okay? So what you can do to kind of trick it into it is we're going to turn our text essentially into an object. So you can't edit it after this. So to be safe, like if you ever wanted to come back and edit it, I would make a copy of it. So one of them is just your text that you can come back and change, and then another one is the object. It's really not that big of a deal because it's just 2 words, but if you had a lot more than that, sometimes it's good to keep a copy. Does that make sense again why you do that? Okay. Once it's an object, you can't edit it. So to make a copy, it's just like copying another layer. I'm just going to drag it down and make a copy. And just so I don't get confused, I'm going to turn this one off. Okay. And then for my text layer, I'm going to write this up on the board. I'm going to make sure I have the right shortcut. It's going to take me a minute. Nope, that wasn't it. I have to figure out what the, what wasn't it? What are we in? The PC shortcut is, and not the Mac one. So let me find the right buttons. Nope. I might even have to do it this way. So we're trying to rasterize it. I just can't find the shortcut. Shoot. I'll find a shortcut for you, but for now, I went up to type, and do you see how it says rasterize type layer? Okay, so type, rasterize type, and take a look at even the layer preview. Do you see that this one is still T for text, but this one just looks like any other image now? Do you guys see that in my preview? So now if I go to transformation and right click, everything's available. So in a nutshell, when you want to transform your text, what is the extra step that you need to do? What was that called? Rasterizing it. Let me see if I can find the shortcut for you. But if it doesn't work, again, type rasterize text. I swear I kept doing this and it didn't work. I'm going to try it one more time. So now I have this text layer back on. It used to be Shift Control R, but it's not doing it. Alt Control R? That definitely wasn't it. Okay, we might just have to go type and then rasterize type layer. If I find one, I will let you know. It could just be a Mac thing. Are any other Mac users in the crowd?
Yes.
Is Command Control
Yeah.
in Windows? That's not it. I hope they didn't get rid of it in 2020. That could be the other thing. But this isn't 2020. This is still 2019. Okay, we'll just stick with this. So type and then rasterize type layer. If I find a shortcut, I will let you know. Now the last bit that I promised you, if you want to find a font that's not loaded onto the machine, have any of you guys been to a website called Dafont before? It's just kind of the one that I like to use because there's a ton and they're all free. So D-A-F-O-N-T, Dafont. And from here you can pretty much find anything. So they have them by category. The recently added or top is usually a good place to start. So these are their top. Beboss New is one of like my favorite fonts ever. So I'm going to download this one. I use it for almost everything now. I don't know why. But again, if you don't find a system font that you like, you can come in here. And on Windows, it's a little bit different. But I'm gonna try it to see if it works the way I think. So right now in Photoshop, let me make sure it's not on here first. Since this is a computer I use, it could already be on here. No, it's not. Okay. So from here, I want to go to download, and it downloads it in a zip folder. Now this is the only thing that has given me trouble in the past, because since it's in a zip folder, sometimes when I try to install it, oh, it does. Okay, good. In the past, we've had to unzip it and then install it. So, dafont.com.
And then where are you gonna find that?
I clicked on top, or you can look it up by its name. Either one. Now let me just make sure that this part worked too. So let me show you again what I did after. So here, there's a whole bunch of stuff, but we are looking for the font files. Font file and font file. Do you guys see those? They kind of have an A next to them. And what I did to install it, all you need to do is double click, and then there's this word install right here. So double click and then hit install. I want you to try this too in just a minute. And now I want to see if it's in Photoshop. So let me click off of this. Back in the day, we'd have to restart the program, but it's already in here. Okay. So again, if there's a font that you, or if you don't find the font that you think that you want, Dafont is great. There's also one called Font Squirrel. They don't have as much. And there's one more, I don't love it as much, 1001 Fonts. And if you're anything like me, you might be able to waste an entire class looking at these things. I could easily do it. Okay. I'm going to give you guys about 30 minutes. Oh, this is another one, another good one too, lemon milk. It's a really good one. I'm going to give you guys about 30 minutes just to kind of work on whatever. It might be just going online and kind of brainstorming ideas, finding fonts that you like. Just make sure that whatever you guys get here in class, that you put it in a file or email it to yourself so it's accessible at home. Because whatever font you download here, when you go home, it won't be there. So just make sure you know what you have. Okay, I'm going to check in 30 minutes. I do have one other thing for you guys today that will start at about 1:30. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and record this so it's also part of your lecture. When I opened this, I already had a blank layer 1. So in case you don't have that, go ahead and add a new layer so you're not putting it on top of your background. I don't know why, but the shortcut is U to get into your shapes. So if you click on U or go to this rectangle here, it gets you to your shapes. And if you right click, you can see that there is something called a line tool. And then before I start drawing, I'm just going to point out a couple of its properties. So up here, can you see that it's 1 pixel, which is pretty small. So if I were to draw the line now, that's how big the line is. That's a 1 pixel line. Not too bad. But if you wanted to see it a little bit thicker, you could also maybe make it 5 pixels. And the fill is the color. So if I wanted to like make that yellow, that's where some of the properties are. So I think, Pamela, what you're trying to do is draw a line so you can see the guides of the perspective lines and see how it just kind of goes sit in for me. If that looks okay, I can hit enter and it puts it in. No, I feel silly. It did not change anything I told it to do. Let me try that one more time. So the fill is yellow and I want to make it 5 pixels. I'm just going to do it really quickly. Stroke yellow. Whoops. Here. Oh, I'm so sorry. So I'm going to come here and on the weight, I'm going to make that 5. So I changed both of them now. Okay. So let me find out. Let's see, what's this one? I'm just going to move that one back to 1 because where you really get the thickness is from the weight right here. So let me change this to 10 now, and I change both the fill and the stroke of that to be yellow. And then I can draw a guideline. So let me undo all of that fun stuff and show it to you from the beginning. So the shortcut for it is U. And when you right click on the default rectangle tool, you can come down to line. Okay. And on the weight, I'm going to keep it at the 10 pixels. And I changed both the fill and the stroke to be yellow. You could keep those black if you wanted, either way. But what I'm going to do now is just try and get it across the top. And if I hit V, I can even move it. You can even still transform this if you want to, but you don't want it to get it too crazy so it throws off the perspective. Okay. So again, U. And I'm just kind of trying to go from corner to corner so it's symmetrical. Does that help? Okay, and then you could even use these same lines to try and draw your guides for other stuff too.
And you're doing that on a blank layer, right?
Yeah, and with these shapes, do you see that each shape I draw goes on its own layer?
Oh,
Yeah, so it's just going to do each shape on its
does
own.
it by itself?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yeah, so that's how you guys can do some guides.